Welcome again to the podcast where we talk bags. I'm Marlon Vandermeer, but you might know me as the Bagfather.
And I'm Jen Zemba.
In this podcast series, we will be talking to everyone involved in aviation about getting your possessions around the world safely.
This episode is sponsored by Sky Chatters, the one and only international community of global citizens.
This episode was recorded and produced prior to any policy changes implemented by Southwest Airlines. Information discussed in this episode reflects the policies and practices in place at the time of recording and may not represent current procedures or guidelines. For the most up-to-date information, please refer to the Southwest Airlines official communications or website.
Southwest is modernizing as part of its current 5-year mission with a key focus on increasing asset utilization while speeding up the tempo of the operation. This includes efforts to increase the speed that customers board and exit the aircraft. A key part of that is transferring bags from one aircraft to another when passengers are on a connecting flight. Mark Baker is Southwest Airlines Senior Manager and has responsibilities for transfer baggage management. Mark, can you tell us a little bit about what makes things different for Southwest from the rest of the industry?
A lot of times we have to come up with unique ways or unique operation procedures to handle just the scale of bags that we deal with. So that's the biggest thing, and it's quite a challenge. With the limited infrastructure that we have available, the lease space requirements, and just the movement of aircraft, we just don't have a plethora of options available to us to be creative in what solutions are out there. So it is a very interesting challenge that we have here at Southwest.
I have a lot of questions. Tell us a little bit more about the challenges that it will give, because it's an airline operation. Most airlines are already dealing with a massive amount of bags. You only have a little bit more bags. Is that true?
Looking at the data, maybe looking at 2023 DOT data, where we ranked 4th of MBR, we handled 8 times more bags than the top 3 airlines combined. And then we handled 3 times more bags as our next closest 5th place position. We handled 30 million more bags than them annually. So the scale of it. So what that does is it was a successful process back in the day when we stood off a small airline out of Dallas, Texas. And it was easy to handle back in the day because the demand was a lot longer. Our enplanements were smaller. Well, we have grown to this large, nearly 5,000 daily flights. What that means is that we have to be sensitive and careful because of the OPEX, right? Because the amount of bags, we require people. A lot of been successes, we've always had a tail-to-tail type of transfer bag operation. So what's meaning tail-to-tail is they pull the transfer bags out, they put them in a cart, and they take them to the next gate. That was good maybe years ago, but we're starting to see trends where the performance numbers are sliding. We're seeing surges in failed-to-transfer bags, and just because of the large-scale operations. I mean, Denver's our largest location now, and the team is projected to handle nearly 30,000 bags daily, and those are just transfers, which is trending more than actually originating bags. So it's quite a unique challenge to solve, and we're learning that tail-to-tail is only sustainable for so long in those larger locations because it just drives a lot of people to do that.
I also think we need to highlight that Southwest is predominantly flying domestic. So it's not an international airline in terms of dealing with transfers on outposts outside the U.S.
Yeah, we have a small international market in the Caribbean and the South and Mexico, so we do see that, but nowhere near to the scales of our domestic operation.
But there's been a lot of innovation that you guys have utilized even in the last 15 or 20 years. When I first became familiar with Southwest, you guys weren't even utilizing barcodes at that point in time. So
yeah,
that was maybe 20 years ago that introduction started and replacing just tons of people out on the ramp?
Yeah, Southwest we've always been a company to try and roll up our sleeves and do it our own way, and it's been quite successful. Barcodes and even sortation was the same way. We figured out our own way to sort bags outside of the way IATA recommended. So that's kind of ingrained in our history, but we're learning that as we get bigger and the scale is if there's products already out there that can solve the same problem, let's look at those and see if they can meet our model.
Let's talk about this for a moment. The key problems that you're seeing, what are those? And how would you like to solve them? What is your first priority right now in becoming future-proof or future flexible?
It's just managing the scale of bags, especially the transfer bags. That's one. Outbound bags is similar, but it's a little bit more focused and has some more attentive solutions associated with it. But for the transfer bags, it's just performing those numbers, because it's not only the bag missing the flight. Well, a tail-to-tail operation in most of our locations, bags that are sitting with long transfers are sitting out in weather. So they get damaged, they get soaked by rains, or they may get snow, and you can cover them as much as you can. So not only is it the failed to transfer, the actual missed bag, but it's also the damage. We spend a considerable amount of money on reimbursement for damaged bags. So looking at solutions to solve for that is all that. We're looking at transfer systems at our key locations, either tied back into our current bag makeup areas or a standalone solution like Denver, which we're extremely excited to be using crossbelt sorter and chutes, and feel it's going to really change the way that we've operated for the last 5 decades.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about what you feel is different from what crossbelt offers from conventional systems?
What Crossbelt provided for us for the Denver solution is it allowed us to utilize a substantial space that the airport built, thinking that it could be used for a conveyor, but when we looked at traditional means and methods, it didn't work. It wouldn't fit. So we were fortunate enough to be researching crossbelt sorters and chutes and learned, well, let's look at it to put chutes on the exterior walls facing inwards and have a sorter surround the circumference of the building. And with that, it worked to where we could get 94 chutes and we could actually utilize that space. Now, it's still quite an investment, but our alternative was a much larger investment, somewhere greenfield that required a building, which would require heat and air conditioning and fans and possibly conflicts with taxiways and aircraft movement. So outside of the transfer bags, our next challenge that we're seeing is trying to solve for bag flow efficiencies. We have a given hour of potential throughput of a system. Any stoppage, whether it be self-inflicted by a jam or a mechanical event, chips away at that potential, and we need every minute of that hour.
I also hear you say getting rid of the manual process. So does that mean you go robotizing a lot of stuff? Or are you going to create autonomous bag carts? Or how do you see that?
I don't know how we see that yet, because back to the original talking point that we talked about, the 2 bags fly free and the Southwest effect, it creates very unique customer arrival profiles that are very compressed and also surge of bags. So, our planes are only on the ground 45 minutes. They are down and they are up. And we've made a lot of processes more efficient, right? You can go through self-tagging kiosks in the ticket counter. You can check your bag really quick. TSA's made their processes faster through checkpoint. So we're creating products at the front of the house that are allowing customers to come to the airport closer to their flight. Well, what's that do? That compresses the arrival curve, which puts more stress on the solutions when it comes to robots and technology.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because I know that Southwest is also improving their boarding processes. Mm-hmm. Other airlines, they see this cannibalism where a bag needs to be checked in and then people say, no, I take it on board, and they travel with carry-ons. That's not likely a problem of Southwest. How in reality does it work for Southwest?
I think where we have a trouble is we're such a customer service-centric business. We just happen to fly planes. So I think that comes into the role of the carry-on bags. But we've looked at that through one of my colleagues, Kevin. We looked at ways of trying to identify what bags, how many carry-on bags customers bring on, what are the size of those, what are our compliant mechanisms are around too large a bags. Because we're seeing we're seeing delayed flights because we're out of overhead bin space. So that's an area that we're looking at a technology solve to help the gate agent identify where there could be a problematic of we got too many carry-on bags, so we're going to have to start checking early. We've made announcements like, hey, you can check bags for free. I think that goes into another area that the industry needs to focus on is we've made the process so efficient on the front end, we're still going to baggage claim and waiting 20 minutes for the first bag.
Oh, that's a completely other story. This is unchanged for the last 40 years. I don't get it. Why do we stand around a bag carousel waiting until a bag is coming out?
Old habits die hard. I think that it needs to change. I think that's the one shortfall of I think there's a tie to the outbound, especially on the carry-on luggage. I think that's truly if we surveyed the customer base, I think the reason is created products to be first on the plane, first off the plane, first through checkpoint, first through the ticket counter. But now I'm just going to wait.
We talked to many people during this podcast, and basically they all highlight that everybody thinks about the passenger journey, but the bag journey is sometimes a forgotten part of the travel experience. How do you see that?
I lead a team of very talented individuals that have over 2 centuries worth of combined experience. So we take that experience and we inject that on all projects, design and provide engineering reviews and provide our recommendations, a list of do's and don'ts and requirements behind that. We also get involved as after this equipment's involved, we're analyzing maintenance programs and procedures and policies and programs to make sure that they're sound and solid, because it goes back to the other thing, we can't afford events. So it's like a 3-tiered approach. And then we follow up with not only the baggage, but TSA as well, because they're a stakeholder of this as well. So are they staffing properly? Are they seeing the right?
We will definitely talk to TSA on this podcast.
Yeah. I got some questions you can ask that individual. No,
we will do a chain question. I definitely give you the opportunity to ask the question, and I will ask it by proxy. So no problem. Okay, so your day-to-day business, and do you keep oversight on every outstation, or are there specific locations that cause trouble?
Mostly the ones that cause trouble, but the big ones, we have tiers, so the tiers 4 through 7. But every one location has an equal importance, because if you look at a small station, they may only have, let's say, 2,000 flights or 2,000 bags a day. But if they miss 10 bags of those 2,000, that MBR is substantial. And in most cases, it's hard for them to meet goal because they don't have the volume to make offset that bad day. Compared to a big site that has 25,000 bags a day, if they miss 400 or 500 bags a day, it's unfortunate, but they have the scale to make up for it. So we do take an approach. There's more of our old megas and super megas that will take a regular monthly cadence on, touch bases with airports. We have our own programs internally where we manage the maintenance on 8 systems throughout the country. And then those outliers, which are smaller, we have quarterly touch bases with the teams and making sure that they're not having any input or negative experiences. And if they are, then we just escalate that and then we put focus on it.
Most of people outside of aviation don't understand really how many layers are involved. So your passengers are carrying bags. If a bag gets lost or there's issues through the system, they blame Southwest. But most of your stations, you don't own that system, so you're relying on the airport to deliver on your behalf. So how do you help your customers identify or see the difference between what's truly a Southwest product and what is an airport product?
For us, we take it, whether it's the airport or TSA, it's our customer's bag. We don't ever want to be in a position where we're explaining to the customer that it's somebody else's fault because we're passing ownership of that. It's our responsibility. It's our programs. It's our volume that stresses these systems out. So we're making sure that we have the teams in place and providing the oversight to make sure it's sound and solid. I'm actively engaged with TSA at Washington, D.C. I'm there every 3 months, covering a whole host of topics and really get involved on real issues. So it's really a holistic approach of all the programs and really putting the pressure and maintaining the pressure. I'm a firm believer that my decisions, my team's decisions, could cause somebody that has to deal with it while we're at home or we're on vacation. Somebody is at the station having to deal with a system that's not working. And we take that very personal.
And it's recognizable we did the research, of course, on this podcast. And when we first announced that we were making the Bagfather, and we reached out to people on Twitter, on X, come talk to us about your complaints. And we target every airline. But we got a lot of very positive things about Southwest. Everybody loves Southwest. And of course there are disruptions, but they forgive you. And that's probably also has something to do with the 2 bags for free policy. But still, they're very happy with the product. And they are also satisfied with the solutions that are offered. So we didn't find a lot of Southwest complaints, to be honest.
That's great to hear. And I truly believe that goes back to our culture. teams are empowered to interact and engage with the customers and kind of be themselves. It's that whole mentality. The culture is as equally at the executive level as it is at the station level. It really flows from the top down with leaders, the culture does. Where you're seeing those no complaints, I truly believe that it's because our customer base has confidence that when things go wrong, we're at least going to do what's right, or we're going to do everything reasonable to make it right. That's a testament to why you don't see the complaint levels that you do. And we have, I'm sure we have them. Everybody does. But I think that's a truly reason why the differentiator is.
Congratulations for that, because again, we spoke to many of them and every airline has different challenges. Can you talk us a little bit through how you see the near future? There will be a new generation of people that fly, a new generation of employees, and a new generation of expectations. People are getting digital savvy. They have expectations when they travel. What is Southwest going to do to cater that?
Looking at the checked baggage topic, looking at how we can improve the process of the check-in, we know that customer trends are changing. Everybody wants to have access on their app or on their phone. Products that we had before, maybe customer bases don't want moving forward. We're looking at how we can adapt to the customer needs, looking at how we changes our ticket counter processes. Employees have changed. The pool is getting more challengers, so we're going to have to migrate to possibly more of a technology type solution to offset that deficiency in the available labor pool.
How do you see that future? How is Southwest seeing innovation to cater a complete new group, tech-savvy travelers, a new generation that's born with the power in their hands?
I see biometrics starting to come into play. I see really products, and we haven't really honed down what the specific product is, but we're assessing a lot of them. Biometrics is getting a lot of it. But I think it's a product to where customers have the option to where they're not as dependent on interfacing with an agent anymore. I just want to go in. I just want to do my own thing. I can do it myself. I'll get through it. We're slowly getting that with Checkpoint. We're seeing biometrics in the CAT program now with this CAT 2 at the checkpoint. You can just put your biometrics in. TSA's standing up pilot programs where it's 100% biometrics, and there's not even an agent at the document checker. So it's coming, and we have to change and we have to evolve to meet that new customer requirements. So.
The landscape today is unique in that we do have generations of people who have zero interest in technology and then a larger group of people who want to use technology. So maybe in 20 years, things get a little bit easier for all airlines and airports because you're no longer catering to two completely different groups of people and you can solidify one or two solutions versus a whole ecosystem of them.
Yeah, I do agree with you, but I do think that it is going to get easier, but I also think that there's going to be a new differentiator out there, right? Because we all maybe reflect on how we grew up. I always joke with my daughter. I'm like, when she's my age, is she going to say, man, do you remember when we used to carry our cell phones? I was like, I remember those days. I wish we were back at them, right? Yeah. So, and I think it's as much the same way, right? That's an evolution of technology and it brings in, but we know that today's society is very technology driven and that's a challenge for us internally that, I don't have much visibility to. My peers, my colleagues do. But, because our strength was so much of that customer-facing product because we could greet people with smiles and we could show our personalities, and that was so much of our culture. Well, when you start migrating towards technology, you letting that personality. So I think there's an element of how do we continue to incorporate our team's personalities is probably one of the most successful reasons why we're so successful.
Well, you take all the personalization really out of the services, right?
I do still have a question about technology. Quite simple. Is there a better way to get bags on board? And what would you like to see in an ideal world? If you can think completely outside the box, how would you see that bags will end up in the belly of the beast?
I see where bags are delivered straight to the gate. So we're sorting to gates and not sorting to T-points. I see spurs at each gate where it's inbound traffic. We're not driving inbound bags to any remote location. They're driving them 20 feet to a drop belt at each gate, and then that's tied to a sorter or an ICS system that's taking them inbound right there. So I think it's really creating technology and solutions that make our teams more efficient. I do see it. Autonomous is coming. We've seen people looking at it. We know that there's some trials overseas. We're looking at it as well. I think it's coming. It's an interesting topic. I'm not so sure how comfortable I am with driverless things around $100 million aircrafts, but it's a whole nother topic, right? So condensing everything into where it's at, right? It's all segmented right now. The screening happens here, the bag makeup happens here, but then the loading at the plane happens here. How do we make it more seamless? So how do we create a journey to lower the touch points of that human element so they can focus on more areas of the operation and, make more of the bags, make their flight?
When technology is moving as fast as it is now, do you find that difficult to recommend an implementation of something that could easily change within a year's time and have one better iteration of whatever is presenting today? Does that present challenges or hesitancies?
I think one good one, and Marlene, you'll be familiar with this, is the bag vision camera that we've tested in Dallas and then for a unique ID. I think it's an awesome technology. Like, it's neat. It's really driving the thing as an opportunity to get away from bags, because the technology, bag has its own biometric, I guess, for lack of a better term. But then that's great in bringing it forward. It could solve a lot of challenges. But the agent is so dependent on the tag when it's a lost bag to know whose bag it is. How do you solve for that? So that's the big thing, that is where the technology is like, technology takes the human element out of it and makes it more efficient. But if there's still a human touch point, that's where the complicated solve comes from.
You touched a little bit earlier on video analytics. Is that something that you guys have looked at yet for counting bags as they're going into the airplane to determine when you might be having a full hold?
We looked at that. We've went a different direction right now with commodity tracking. It's a scanning tool. We know that we're not looking at RFID. We feel like RFID is an old technology. The tag cost has not come down, but my opinion is the tag price per tag is plateaued. It's went as far as it can. Labor's only going up. Costs are only going up. So is that delta going to increase again? So we need to leverage new ways to look at doing things differently.
And one of the topics that I am passionate about is AI. How do you leverage AI in baggage?
We're not leveraging it yet at Southwest, but a lot of the tools that we're looking at to solve for bag flow efficiencies have artificial intelligence put into it. So we've created a team internally, not our team, but Southwest has. It's just they're over AI. So how we leverage it is, first we have a conversation with that team to make sure that we're not violating any policy or procedure with how AI is and what it's doing. But what we do now is with the AI is those inherent technologies have it built into it and the machine learning. So if they have 10 bags that has a handle stuck out of it or a strap hanging off, the more they see like that, it makes the technology smarter, so it makes the product better and it makes the data better. And AI is going to do it a lot more efficient, quicker, and more accurate than our traditional time and motion study activities with human beings, right? And the scale will be larger. So we're leveraging it every chance that we can on the baggage side, as long that it meets our policies.
I would like to give you the opportunity, by the way, to ask a question to the TSA.
Oh, yes. Let's get your question that we can pose to the TSA when we speak with them for our next episode.
When is the next evolution of EDS equipment coming?
When is the next evolution of EDS equipment is coming? I think that's a very good question.
Basically, what we need to solve for as an industry is we need to start learning how to grow on our current footprints. A lot of people don't understand that all the cost at an airport filter down to the airlines. It was a surprise to me when I started in this industry. The airlines pay for basically everything. So we cannot continue a trend of every 10 or 15 years investing in hundreds of millions of dollars of projects to build more square footage because we need more EDS equipment. We really need to look at how do we make these faster, the machines faster. But that's also going to drive what do we need to do to the systems. ICS benefits from faster machines. The other systems do as well. And this is one of the topics that we're talking with headquarters to drive that next change. But, it took us over 20 years to get where we are today. And if faster machines kind of hits the reset button, we feel at Southwest that we don't have 20 years to get the next evolution figured out. There's a severe risk of plateauing growth in the airline industry because we're just out of room. I think that the powers that be don't understand that checked baggage is not solved for yet. There's a big push to get the CT and the screening profile increased at the checkpoint, which is very important. We want our airline industry to be safe, but they do good within their confounds. I know that TSA headquarters looking at this next evolution. They understand the need of faster machines, but no, I don't think they're holding it up as much as it is.
But also with the new iterations of EDS, and I think they have been good about pushing for better throughput through each of their machines, but with those upgrades often come redesigns of entire systems that are required in order to feed those machines. So if you have 3 EDS and you have to add another one because of baggage increases, that requires a whole redesign. So it's no longer just the millions of dollars in the machinery, but also more equipment on the back end to feed that.
Right, and we can't afford to have faster machines if that means that we're going to increase risk to the airline industry and be less safe, right? And I think to be fair to TSA is that they are making decisions off intelligence that we don't have the security clearance to know about, and we trust them to take that information and create programs and policies to make our industry safe, and they need to hold true to that even with the next evolution, and I'm sure they will. It just takes a process to get there.
All right. So, Mark, you mentioned that baggage offices aren't necessarily required anymore, so you're going to close those down and open up space for other things. What does the process look like if I lose a bag?
If we lose a bag, the customer comes to either the baggage service office or they have the QR code and put a claim in the app. We'll go and do a claim research. We'll try and identify it. We'll reach the BSO is responsible for engaging with upwind stations of where the bag was coming from and talk through it and try and identify it. Our commodity tracking tool also has reports, so we can kind of get a last scan of where the bag is. And then once we locate the bag, it's our responsibility to get that bag to the customer. So if it's at their vacation or their hotel, we'll deliver it straight to the hotel. In the unfortunate circumstance, if we can't find the bag and it's truly lost, then a claim is committed and then we, reasonable reimbursement for the contents that are there. Like, I'm hoping that I lose my golf clubs that haven't happened yet, but I don't think that they would pay me for my club, right?
Yeah. And Mark, I know that Southwest also faced some pretty intense disruptions. That required out-of-the-box thinking, being flexible. You mentioned that so many people helped out within. How do you deal with major disruptions, and what kind of protocol starts then?
Well, there's disruptions is each of our locations, they have a command center, a network operations center in Dallas. So it's really a collaborative team of very solid, discrete, very precise communication of what's going on. And it's just a network of teams understand what resources they have available, where they can move people, where they can pull other resources in. That's where you see aircraft swaps or you see gate changes and stuff. So it's almost a living thing every day, right? There's constant movement for a bunch of uncontrollable factors. And they're just making on-the-fly decisions.
One of my first introductions to Southwest when I started working with you guys in my previous job, there must have been a hurricane or something that transpired, and I'm trying to contact whoever the buyer was that I was talking with to find out that he was a part of maybe a rapid response team or just an entire group of people from Southwest headquarters that just packed up and headed to go and help whatever station was hurting because of irregular operation.
Yeah, we have a unique culture, back to the culture where either it's a winter event or a storm event, or even if it's we've created a situation in our network from commercial where the demand has exceeded the capacity substantially. Our leaders really reflect on those teams needing a break. So we are aggressive at pulling people from all other stations and putting them on flights, paying for the hotels. And since we have one aircraft type, one set of procedures for everything, we can pull anybody from anywhere into any location and they can pick up where the other team left off so they can get a break and then really adapt. And we could easily double or triple staff in that. So, and that's just part of the culture.
Mark, that's fantastic, of course, but for the listeners, what are the volumes when a big disruption hits you?
Oh, well, to give you an example, with our biggest disruption of 2 years ago, the winter storm that had basically crippled it, we had 14,000 bags sitting in one location.
One location, and you go through it manually.
One by one, calling phone. We had calling customers saying, this is Southwest Airlines. We have your bag here in St. Louis. We have it here in Denver.
How do we get you back with your bag?
Some would want to come to it. And it goes to the technology. Some customers had air tags in their bags. So we also saw a small percentage of customers show up to where the bags were and are like, well, I can find my bag. And then we're like, okay, well, how do we escort somebody in the side area so they can help us find their bag?
People don't realize at home they care about their bag, but there are thousands of bags with a disruption like that. Mark, thank you very much.
Thanks to Mark Baker for that great conversation. What do you think, Marlon?
Fantastic. I think we can learn a lot from Mark. He has his act together.
Absolutely. This episode was recorded and produced prior to any policy changes implemented by Southwest Airlines. Information discussed in this episode reflects the policies and practices in place at the time of recording and may not represent current procedures or guidelines. For the most up-to-date information, please refer to Southwest Airlines' official communications or website.
You can check out more episodes at thebagfather.com or by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget to get in touch. Go to our website and tell us about your baggage-related experiences and mishaps. In the meantime, thank you for listening and join us next time for more baggage-related conversations with the Bagfather. This is a Fresh Air production brought to you by Baggage Media.